The man who broke my daughter's heart stood in front of me on her wedding day and smiled like he had already won. He looked at my old, rough hands, the same hands that worked for 30 years to give my daughter a better life. And he whispered, "Maybe some people just don't belong in a place like this." I didn't answer him. I just looked at my daughter. She was standing near the mirror in her wedding dress, but she wouldn't look at me. Her eyes kept moving away every time I tried to catch her attention. Something was wrong, and deep inside, I already knew it had something to do with the conversation we had that morning. "Dad," she had said quietly while I fixed the button on my old suit, "I need to ask you something." I smiled and told her, "Anything, sweetheart." She took a deep breath and looked down at the floor. "Your hands. They're embarrassing. The guests will notice. They'll ask questions. I don't want people thinking my father doesn't take care of himself." For a moment I thought I heard her wrong. Those hands she was ashamed of had carried her when she was a little girl. Those hands had worked double shifts when her mother left us. Those hands had held her during every nightmare, cooked every meal, and paid every bill. But I didn't fight her. I simply nodded and said, "If my hands make you uncomfortable, I won't stand beside you." Her face changed for a second, like she wanted to say something. But before she could, her future husband's mother walked in. She looked at me from head to toe and smiled. "I think this is the right decision," she said. "A wedding is about showing success. Not everyone understands that." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about my hands. They wanted me gone. For months, I had watched my daughter slowly change after she married into that wealthy family. They bought her expensive clothes, took her to fancy events, and made her feel like her old life was something to hide. I was just the reminder of where she came from. So I quietly left the wedding hall before the ceremony started. Outside, I sat in my old truck and stared at my hands on the steering wheel. I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was sadness. Then my phone rang. It was the wedding venue manager. "Sir," he said nervously, "you need to come back immediately." I frowned. "Why?" "The wedding is already happening." There was a long silence. Then he said something that made my heart stop. "Because we found something in the wedding contract. Something your daughter and her fiancé don't know about." I gripped the phone tighter. "What are you talking about?" His voice dropped. "Your name is on a document they tried to hide from you. And sir, it changes everything?" I looked back at the wedding hall through my windshield. For the first time that day, I stopped feeling like the man who was pushed away. Because I suddenly realized they didn't know who they had just insulted. I walked back into the wedding venue slowly, but this time I wasn't the same man who had left 10 minutes earlier. I still felt the pain of my daughter's words, but the call from the manager had planted a question in my mind. What were they hiding from me? When I entered the office area, the venue manager immediately closed the door behind me. His face looked worried, and he kept checking the hallway as if someone might be listening. "Sir, before I show you this, I need you to understand something," he said. "I have worked here for 15 years. I have seen many families fight over money, but I have never seen anything like this." He placed a file on the table. My hands shook slightly as I opened it. Inside was the wedding agreement, payment records, and several pages with signatures. I looked through them carefully until I saw my name, but I wasn't listed as a guest. I wasn't listed as the father of the bride. My name was connected to the entire wedding arrangement. I looked at him in confusion. "Why is my name on this?" He took a deep breath. "Because you paid for this wedding." I froze. "That's impossible," I whispered. "I only help my daughter with small things. I don't have money for a wedding like this." The manager looked at me with sympathy. "That's exactly what they wanted you to believe." He turned another page toward me. "This wedding was funded through a trust account created years ago. The account was opened by your late wife before she passed away." My heart stopped. My wife. The woman who left us with so many unanswered questions. The woman whose last words to me were, "Protect our daughter no matter what happens." I stared at the documents, trying to understand what I was seeing. Then I noticed something strange. The account had been accessed several times in the past year, and every withdrawal had one name attached. My daughter's future mother-in-law. I felt a cold feeling run through me. They have been using your wife's money? I asked. The manager nodded slowly. But that's not the worst part. He opened another folder. Inside were copies of messages, bank transfers, and emails. The first message I saw was from my daughter's fiancé. It said, "Once the wedding is done, he won't have any control left. After that, everything will belong to us." I read the sentence again and again. My own daughter's future husband wasn't just trying to hide me from the wedding. They were planning to remove me completely. Before I could say anything, the office door suddenly opened. My daughter's fiancé was standing there. He looked at the papers in my hand and smiled. A calm, confident smile. The same smile he had given me earlier. "I was wondering how long it would take you to find out," he said. I stood up. "What have you done?" He walked closer and lowered his voice. "Careful. You're still the man everyone thinks abandoned his daughter on her wedding day." I felt anger rising inside me, but I stayed silent. Then he leaned toward me and whispered the one sentence I would never forget. "You have no idea how easy it is to make people believe a poor old man is the villain." He walked away, leaving me alone with the papers. But what he didn't know was that years before this day, I had learned how to protect myself from people exactly like him. I didn't chase after him. I didn't shout. I didn't give him the reaction he wanted. Instead, I picked up the documents, placed them carefully inside my old jacket, and walked out of the office. For years, people had mistaken my silence for weakness. They were wrong. The next morning, I met with the lawyer who had helped my wife create the trust years ago. He confirmed everything. The money was never meant for my daughter's new family. It was meant to protect my daughter's future and give her security, but someone had been slowly taking control of it. The lawyer looked at me and said, "Your wife knew there would be people who would try to use your daughter. That's why she left one final condition." I looked up. "What condition?" He opened the sealed envelope. Inside was a letter from my wife. My hands trembled as I read her words. "If you are reading this, it means someone tried to make you feel small again. Remember this, the value of a person is not in their clothes, their money, or their status. It is in what they do when nobody is watching." I had to stop reading for a moment, because she was right. I had spent years trying to give my daughter everything, but I never realized someone was teaching her to be ashamed of the very things that made me her father. With the lawyer's help, we gathered every record, every message, and every illegal transfer. Then came the day everything changed. The same wedding guests, who once whispered about my old suit and rough hands, were now sitting in a courtroom listening to the truth. The messages were shown. The fake documents were exposed. The hidden money transfers were revealed. My daughter's fiancé and his mother had built their perfect image on lies. The man who once told me, "No one fights me and wins," sat quietly as his entire plan collapsed. But the hardest moment wasn't seeing him lose. It was seeing my daughter break down after hearing everything. After the hearing, she came to me with tears in her eyes. "Dad, I was so wrong." I looked at her. She grabbed my hands, the same hands she once wanted to hide. I forgot everything these hands did for me. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then I said, "People can make mistakes, but they have to choose whether they stay lost or find their way back." Months later, my daughter rebuilt her life. She walked away from the people who only cared about money and appearances. As for me, I never changed. I still wore my old watch. I still drove my old truck. And I still had the same rough hands. But now, my daughter held them proudly. Because the truth was simple. Those hands were never embarrassing. They were proof that someone loved her enough to sacrifice everything. And the people who tried to make me feel worthless learned the hardest lesson of all. You can hide the truth for a while, but when the right person finally speaks, no lie can survive.